The largest church in the world is dedicated to the memory of St. Peter. It took 120 years to build it. It's in the Vatican. And in the 1940s, there were excavations going on beneath the church, and one of the workmen's shovels hit the top of the roof. So dirt was hauled away, and what was underneath the basilica is an ancient cemetery with mausolea and so forth, sarcophagi. But directly underneath the altar where the Pope has Mass, I think it's about 300 feet, it was the tomb of St. Peter. So, as tradition always claimed, Peter's burial place was marked by this basilica. Jesus gave Peter the authority to tend the flock, feed my sheep, tend my lambs. This was a threefold commission to make up for Peter's threefold denial of Jesus. And it would be Peter and his successors who would have the responsibility of taking care of the flock of Jesus. The successors are called popes. We've had 266 of these holy fathers. The current one, of course, is Pope Francis. Pope Francis grew up in Argentina, one of 5 children. His father worked on the railway, and in 1969, his given name was Jorge or George Bergoglio, was ordained to the priesthood. Probably the last man in the world who would ever think that one day he would become Pope. The popes have come from many backgrounds. There have been soldiers, farmers, scholars, rich and poor. Pope John the 23rd, who was the Pope who called the Second Vatican Council, was so poor when he was a boy that his parents made him carry his shoes to school, when he walked barefoot to school. The history of the papacy has been a tumultuous one, to say the least. The first 36 popes or so were martyred for the faith. It was almost part of the job description. Whoever is pope is going to be killed. Pretty daunting, to say the least. But there were brave enough men who took the responsibility. Even in modern times, we see this tumult affecting the church. Popes Pius VI and VII were both kidnapped by Napoleon, who thought that he finally had conquered the Catholic Church. But of course it wasn't to be, because the church will exist until the end of history in its form as we know it presently. There will always be a pope. And Pius IX, who gave the doctrine of, or promulgated the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception, he was the pope when the Diocese of Cleveland was established. When, at his funeral, anti-Catholics tried to throw his body into the Tiber River. In our own country, some of you have been to Washington, D.C. and have visited the Washington Monument. Well, the stones of the monument were donated by different countries, and the Vatican even donated a stone. But anti-Catholics got wind of this and went to the Washington, the mall, as they call it, the land where the monument is now constructed, and threw the Vatican's stone into the Potomac River. This is kind of a blotch, really, on the history of our own nation, which was not supportive of Catholics in the beginning, and even now looks at the church with a certain suspicion. The church, of course, was established by Jesus. It's represented by the net that doesn't tear, that catches fish of all kinds, meaning people from all walks of life. The chief fisherman is the Pope, and one of the things that he has among his regalia is the so-called fisherman's ring. The ring is a silver ring with a picture of a net on it, with his given papal name, which of course now is Francis. If Pope Francis dies, the ring will be destroyed with a silver hammer, indicating, of course, that the office of the papacy is open. The Pope is important because one of his aspects of his ministry is to keep the church united. And when people support the holy office of the papacy, the church is one. When people rebel against the Pope, then the church tends to be split. So in this country we have 30,000 religious groups, all claiming to be Christian. The thing is, Jesus did not establish 30,000 groups. In fact, at the Last Supper, Jesus said that they may be one. It's in John chapter 17. That they may be one as you, Father, and I are one. The Pope is a father, which is really what the term Pope means, Papa. And he is charged with keeping the church Catholic, meaning that our profession of faith will be defended and kept intact. Recently, the Pope issued a document on marriage and family life. I would urge people to, you can read it because it's a long document, 395 paragraphs, but you can read a summary of it, 6 pages long. Read the summary. Don't pay attention to the New York Times or to some other sources that have their own agendas. The thing is, when people believe that the Pope is not infallible, what happens is they effectively believe that everybody else is, including CNN, Fox News, NBC, all these sources, which are just media sources. They're not divinely instituted authorities to preach about the message of the gospel. When we talk about the infallibility of the Pope, of course, we're not saying that a Pope cannot make mistakes. Remember that when Pope Francis was elected, he asked the people to pray for him, and he does that regularly. Please pray for me. But all it means, and not to say that it's nothing, it is important, is that the Pope will never teach erroneously when he's teaching as a universal pastor and teacher. So off-the-cuff comments and press conferences are not examples of teaching as universal pastor and teacher. So documents and other more formal ways of teaching. The Pope will never steer people wrong. So we can look at the Holy Father's office as something like a lighthouse, which sailors need lest they crash onto the shore or become grounded on the shoals. We need to pray for the Holy Father and pray for the church. The church, of course, is always in need of reform, but the reform really has to start right here, with each person. The church raises up saints. This is why she's established. And we have many saints to prove that. But it doesn't mean that everybody at any given time is holy or as holy as he could be. So we have to work on that and show the world something about the power, the presence, and the love of God and the way we live and the way we interact with other people. The world needs the church, even though the world does not appreciate the church. The world has no hope apart from the church because there is no hope apart from Christ.